Hi, welcome to the New York Parrot Literary Corner. I am Dustin Pickering, your noble host. Today we have bilingual young poetess and story writer from India, Pankhuri Sinha, who has two books of poems published in English, Prison Talkies and Dear Susanna, and five collections in Hindi, two collections of stories published in Hindi, also called Kai Bu Din and Kissa a Kahor with Gaina Peeth and two more coming soon. I apologize for hacking up the language. She has been published in many journals, anthologies, home and abroad. She has won many prestigious national and international awards. Her script for the UGC documentary Cobra God at Mercy won the Best Film Award in 1997. Her poems have been translated in over 22 languages. She has also published her original poems in English in magazines and anthologies in India, the UK, and USA, Romania, and the world all over. She has set up an international group of poets called Poets Without Borders and regularly organizes themed-based poetry readings. She won the Best Correspondence Prize for her short story in the first Chekhov Literature Festival in Yalta, Crimea in 2019. She won the Special Jury Award in the Crimea International Poetry Contest in Italy in January 2021. Most recently, she won the Sahaya Excellence in Literature Award in Bangladesh on the 30th of April and third prize for her poetry, Chekhov in My Heart, in the category Geography of Chekhov's Places. Her writing is dominated by themes of exile, immigration, gender equality, and environmental concerns. After doing her BA from Delhi University and PG diploma in journalism from Symbiosis Pune, Pankhuri did her master's in history from SUNY Buffalo and has a unfinished PhD from the University of Calgary, Canada. She has worked in various positions as a journalist, lecturer, and content editor. Thanks for joining us today, Pankhuri. How are you?
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure and honor to be here, Dustin. I am doing good, actually fantastic now that I am on the show talking to you. Thank you
Excellent.
again.
That's wonderful to have you, and we look forward to learning from you and everything you have to offer. So, first things, I'm interested. What do you think the difference between short fiction and poetry could be?
Well, plenty of differences, right? Many, many differences. I think to make it easier, there are two different genres, but to
Mhm.
make it easier, let me just start with the difference between the many kinds of poetry that's being written today. You know,
Mhm.
we know that in the classic sense, poetry was rhyming, it was lyrical, and then came the free verse, right? So there
Mhm.
are many forms of experiments going on with poetry itself, within poetry. There are very many forms being discovered as well, like we all learned of haiku later, and then now we are learning of tangaka, and there are so many other forms. Today I learned of something called the sino. So that is there, and there is something called prose poetry, which is which is like it's different from flash fiction or fiction, in the sense that it is poetic in its content and treatment of the content, but it's written in a prose format, or it says that this is the way of experimenting it. There is also a difference that which I really want to kind of talk about, because I feel very passionately about poetry. There are many
Mhm.
kinds of poetry, even within the free verse, right? Uh, I hate to use this word, but it's actually a complimentary one. That there is poetry which is very fine embroidery, which you
Mhm.
can feel that it has been written very thoughtfully over a period of time, with lots of editing, lots of thinking, but it lacks that kind of sort of fire and passion. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like you
Mhm.
could, I'm saying this from a critic's point of view,
Right.
and there is poetry which might be very simple, uh, but it has a lot of fire, and there
Mhm.
might be lines that would be extremely loaded. So that's there. Now, having said this, I think now it becomes easier to distinguish between fiction and poetry.
Mhm.
I think fiction is something where you completely, treat an event in a story-like fashion. You narrate it, right? That this is what happened in its totality. There is a beginning, there is an end. Now, even here, it's very tricky because even in poetry, it has been done since time immemorial,
Mhm.
from the Mask of Anarchy of Shelley to even Wordsworth, and many poets in my language have done this. Even using the word kahani, which is the Hindi word for story.
Mhm.
That this is how we heard it, and then the whole, it's about, say, a crisis or an event
Mhm.
or a rebellion or even a love story. It's told in a narrative sort of a format, but it's poetry because of its treatment both of content and of structure, right, form. So I think that's the difference. In fiction, even now fiction has also become so experimental and abstract. It doesn't begin
Right.
like that. People are writing so many experimental ways, but still there is a story which is completely told in some way. And there are characters, and there has to be a time defined. You can do all of this in poetry as well, but then poetry gives you a broader kind of a horizon. You can bring in lots of other things. I mean,
Mhm.
ideology, lots of other things. What I'm saying is it's very different. I mean, poetry can just be on clouds, right? Poetry can just be on rain or the lack of it. I mean, there's so many things that poetry can be on. There are themes that are common to the both, but then in order to write a story on, say, a drought, you would
Mhm.
need to invent characters who would be suffering because of it, and weave an entire narrative. But in poetry, you could either just talk of Mother Earth or heat or something, or you could also bring in characters. I mean, you could just say people, or you could also talk about uh, some people have also named people in poetry, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Lucy, and so on and so forth. So there is a very big difference, but there are very many overlaps. And yes, the same themes can be tackled by both genres. Of course, the treatment would be very different. So it's not like events can't be written about in poetry or anything like that. It has to be poetic. And by
Mhm.
that, I don't just mean that it has to be read in a sort of rhythmical way, which of course is required. But it has to
Right.
have poetry in it because it brings in other things. It brings in that poetic vision to it and that poetic argument to it, in a
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm.
By argument here, I mean that it is contextualizing it in a bigger sense, or it's saying something other than the story. The story is not the main part in it, but it's stepping outside of it. I think that's the biggest difference.
Right. So what sort of themes do you pursue in your own writing, both in your short fiction and your poetry?
What sorts of themes do I pursue?
Yes.
Right. Many themes. Actually, Dustin, I don't know if I told you, but I used to live in New York. And my first
Okay.
book of Right. And my first book of stories in Hindi, which was the first
Mhm.
book that I published in 2006, was published while I was living there. I used to live in Amherst, New York, the town next to Niagara Falls and Buffalo.
Mhm.
And I still have the place, and someday I'm going to go back. Now, so at that point in time, let me continue in a linear fashion. So at that point in time, these stories were in Hindi, and they were about maybe a little bit of nostalgia, and that nostalgia is organic. Doesn't mean I don't love the place. I really loved it. It's also about encountering a new culture, a complete new world, right? And those stories are also there. And there are so many other stories, right, about the Indian social structure and so on and so forth. Probably I haven't written so much of those encounter stories till now, and actually that will first show up a lot in my novel. But my second collection, which is called Kisai Kohinoor, like you said, which means the story of the Kohinoor, the diamond. But it's not the historical story of the Kohinoor diamond, but it is about the Tower of London and the exhibition. The girl working in America visits there and what she feels, and it's about the immigrant society. Similarly, there is a love story sort of a thing about a sexual encounter between a girl from the Eastern world and an American boy, and the cultural difference and the way they understand love and how do they live it.
Hmm.
So these are the kind of themes that I was writing about then. But then, I joined the master's program in Sunny Buffalo to study history. My subject is history, like you said. I have an unfinished PhD from Canadian University of Calgary. So I joined this program, and my life sort of changed completely. I was living there with my ex-husband, who was my high school sort of sweetheart. We had met him right after high school, and we'd immigrated together. Before US, we'd also lived in Thailand. But we had a little bit of a tense marriage, and so on and so forth. Happens, right? I mean, it's life.
Hmm.
So, but we were trying to pull things together. We just built a brand new house, which I really, really miss. And I got into academic politics. I don't know how much time we have to spell it out, and I will spell it out even more. Actually, I'll also bring in this book. I got into academic politics, and I kind of got deported. Believe me, my green card was like in labor clearance stage, and I kind of dropped it for a study permit that was being offered by the history department, Sunny Buffalo. This was in 2007. And I dropped it. I wasn't thinking straight, because I shouldn't have done it. In a few months, I would have gotten my green card. So what I did is, when I was nearing, I was this close to getting a permanent residency in the United States of America, a country I loved and I still do. I dropped it and went and stood at the farthest point of the immigrant line. And what happened after that is that my study permit got cancelled
Hmm.
based on the wrongful complaint of a professor who was actually following me. This is
Hmm.
really true. Books and books about it. I mean, poems and poems about it. So many that yeah, I mean, they are there in two of my books, and several of these poems have been translated in various languages, and they will come in a new book. It's called Shadows on Snow, which is a multilingual book of these poems and the translations. But this was a book that I wrote after the uh, story collections, prison talkies,
Okay.
because I was actually detailed. Yeah, and this is all about that. So I'm just coming to the themes itself, and because it
Hmm.
is so intertwined with the events in life, right? I'm
Right.
just explaining. So I'll take 2 more minutes and make myself clear. But this was written in 2013. I got deported, and I was not only that I got deported, I was even detained. I have a poem as well in on this topic, which is actually a brand new poem, and maybe I will read that to you later. Uh, it's called Reinventing Ourselves for Magical Recovery. I'll read it to you later when you ask me to do so.
Okay.
But yeah, so I came back home to India, and then I applied. I wanted to get back. Imagine, I was living there for 6 years. So all of my belongings, they're kept at a friend's place. And I wanted to go get that and, just get my life back together. It was unimaginable for me that after a divorce, I will end up being in India. So I went to Canada. I got admission in the University of Calgary, which is a beautiful place in the foothills of Rockies. But again, there's just one coincidence in this story. That is that my passport was expiring and my study permit took just a long, long time to renew. I didn't clear my PhD, and when I didn't, I didn't clear my candidacy in the first go, and then I said, there's no point. I need to take a break. So, which is what I have been doing. I worked on odd jobs. But this is a book that came out while I was still in Canada, Prison Talkies in 2013, and this is about Chautauqua County Detention Center where I was detained. But like I say, Dustin, I still love the place. So, there are so many poems about wanting to go back. There's so many poems just with those events. But then there are poems on other things as well. Corona, lockdown, humanity in India, right? My stories are also a lot about the corruption in India. So if you have to really pinpoint, I am one of those poets or writer who really kind of highlight the corruption in our society as well as in our political structures. So there are lots and lots of political poems, so to speak, which will talk about the establishment, which is so exploitative of people, not bringing enough development and all of that. And that theme is recurrent in stories and poems in Hindi as well. Environment, it's very big. I think from nature we have journeyed to environment, right? Because earlier we were just writing beauty and love for nature, but now we are writing, environmental concern, both in Hindi and English. So that's there, and very many other things, gender issues, topics of now literature is getting really, really bold. So many poems around childbirth. Um, Childbirth as in wanting to make a baby, or something like that, or other things dealing with adoption and stuff like that, right? And there are so many other things: war, peace, right? Like there are calls for say write a poem for Yemen or Palestine, and one kind of feels that yes, poetry should do this. I really feel that poetry should do this, as in be an advocate of people's rights, and also be the voice of people. Uh, Lots of people in this country went through immense hardship during Corona. I was just reading the New York Times today, and it was all full of the drama that happened. I shouldn't say drama, I should say the ordeal that people suffered when the oxygen crisis was happening in New Delhi, because there was an explosion of corona cases. There were just bodies being cremated like anything. It was horrible, and we've just come out of it, and we are just dealing with it now. We are just trying the culprits, because oxygen was sold, it was black marketed, right? People died in cars waiting for a hospital bed, gasping for breath. So it was very, very sad. But the point that I'm trying to make is that people really have to be very, very responsible. And I don't think they are understanding the crisis called Corona. So they're just moving around without masks. There are villagers who are not ready to take the vaccine. So several challenges. So we also talk about challenges. So these are, I think, all the things. I would also like to show two of my poetry books, the latest ones. This is the fourth one, This is in Hindi, and this is Dil Rate. This is in
like that art.
fifth collection, both in Hindi, and so translate for you really quickly what they mean. Ose subhe means morning, which is wet with dews, and this one means a night made up of songs. So,
Okay, interesting. So you can share a poem with us now if you'd like.
Yes, certainly. I think I will share this brand new one, right?
Okay.
Reinvent ourselves for magical actually, and it will tell you really what happened again. Or maybe I should.
And this is the New York Parrot Literary Corner. We have Pankhuri Sinha today, and she's going to read us a poem. And we're diligently waiting, and hopefully she'll stun us. I know she will. She'll get us thinking quite a bit with her poetry. We just have an interesting talk about the corona and some of the effects going on around the world, especially in India right now. And very terrible thing going on.
Right.
Whenever you're ready.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay, this is called Reinventing Ourselves for Magical Recovery. Pronounced an illegal immigrant out of the blue in my own front porch, where I had planted the grass green a few months back and had installed the security alarm, now buzzing ironically. I, rendered stateless, disqualified homeowner by an academic politics, which having lured me to bed by the charms of one professor, who then needed me to go elsewhere for studies doctoral, had cancelled my study permit. After having me drop my nearly achieved green card on the wrongful complaint of another professor who had been following me, and yes, it was my husband who had asked, would I like to go home for good? Would I like to go home for good when I didn't greet the stalking professor on the nth encounter in a theater called Four Seasons? Proceeded straight to the university which had fenced my entry with charges of criminal trespass. And I still hadn't imagined they would call immigration to take a student freshly divorced with pending thesis and still wonder what made them so angry. Or what exactly was their anger about? What behind that vendetta that sent me to prison? Still an enigma. Took a lot of energy to crawl out of the dirt hole dug up for me. New university, lots of books, hard work, poetry, free speech, new friends, camaraderie, faith, love, love of nature. For nature can be a true friend, a guide, forever teaching to renew, reinvent, recharge, and strengthen.
That's interesting. It tells a story, and it makes a lot of points about being stranded, kind of in a way. You're sort of in limbo there in that poem. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. You can
Thank you.
share another one if you'd like.
Yes. Since you are mentioning the corona crisis,
Okay.
I will just read something on that.
Okay.
Ton of corona poems, and indeed, it was very, very trying. So just give me a second and I will take it out. I took out all New York poems to read, but then, yeah.
You're ready. Just let me know. If you guys out
Right.
there watching haven't subscribed, now's your chance. Subscribe to our channel and hit that button there on YouTube. And just let us know what you think while you're looking at it, while you're sitting here listening in. So tell us what you think, and we'll definitely be willing to reply to your comments. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So this poem is called Corona Nights.
Mm-hmm.
A man whose case I took from a COVID help group to advertise for help on social media died last night. The news came freezing me in my tracks as I wrapped the day's work, and I remembered how I had waited for help. Slightest info, ray of hope for hours and hours. After writing his condition, pleading help, a hospital bed, doctor's care, oxygen, plasma, remdesivir and other injections, in the national capital where the opulence of some makes for sickening display, and where a criminal government comfortably lodged has exported oxygen and vaccines, triggering a crisis, and finally, in the dead of the night, I called a hospital, then his family. But it seems he got to any and all help late, and the virus corona had begun its work, choking his organs, sapping his life force, as it's doing to many. In an unbelievable dance of destruction, every minute as we speak, eat, breathe, sleep. Susceptible humans at God's mercy, the numbers dying in an hour are horrifying. And that is of those reported, of course, they haven't closed the newspapers and television channels. They cannot ask people to starve to death before corona kills them. The country has just seen an election. Intellectuals have commended the victory of the righteous. So what? So what if their rallies too killed people, hundreds of them? They have championed wars and sacrificed human blood. So what is the principle they are shouting in the name of? And a friend today was told to deposit his old COVID-infected parents in the hospital designate and leave, and not visit and self-isolate with double mask at home. And if the worst happened, he was told the state would take care of their body's last rites. In a group funeral in an electric crematorium. As it's doing to many bodies, but my friend dear. But my friend has not just prayed and wished well, but visited again, and let us hope life will triumph over death. In a non-stop stabbing of rights and justice, and forgive me if this is not poetry to you, I'm too tired to repeat, too sad to rhyme. My fingers hurt and head throbs what happened to my country. And why can it still not control itself from socializing completely? And why can it not think of a miracle to save itself and others? Desperately clinging to the rough edges and waiting to get to the clean shores of life, watery and blue and windy and breezy. Just the thought of which today makes us dizzy, dizzy with delight. Dear life, please be kind.
Quite a lot of history there, but it's all encapsulated in actual living moments. That's one of the things I noticed about the poem is that this is all going on. I mean, it's written as in the present in a way, and it's all these things are happening, and they're actual events. So you're recording history and on a personal scale, So it's not like you're writing a very human poem, a very human story in the poem, which is not it's not too typical a lot of times in poetry. I think it's a lot more common now than it has been before, and which I find that fascinating. That this is it's sort of almost a new way, a fresh way of looking at history from a personal lens. It was very, very meaningful poem, and I think it's a very necessary poem for the times we're living in. And I know things have cleared up on our side quite a bit for as far as COVID is concerned. We're doing fairly well here in the United States and recovering a little bit better than I know India has been hit with new variants and so forth. And it's very sad to hear that it affects everybody. It's affecting all of us all over the world, are being affected by these things. So definitely a good and important poem.
Dustin, can I read just one more on Corona because it'll show you another side of it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Okay, so this one is called Fired. I'm the journalist who was fired when lockdown began. I covered crime beat There were three of us, only one remained. Crime rose up and voices silenced. In the second wave, it became criminal to say a state was running out of oxygen. People gasped for breath as oxygen got exported, so was vaccine. Streets a crime scene with people dying in hospital queue. I'm the newspaper hawker who screamed the headline, didn't know what to do when the press was closed. I roamed the bylanes, did odd jobs, sold vegetables till I fell sick too. I could have died, but God saved me. When I woke up, there were bodies around. I ran away. I ran and ran, but the village had it too. The sudden lockdown resulting exodus made a mess. So many didn't know what to do, and some had duty compulsory. They were beaten on the way, some taken to prison for no fault at all. The government acted arbitrarily to reduce its citizenry from speaking up. No one checked after the mask, none followed. But the mutant strain, the rapid spread, hearts will howl, let loose on streets while so many quarantined. No one heard anyone's plea to maintain distance voluntarily. Community transfer created chaos. And while I am the citizen who screamed distancing, I got caught in the game, infection too, when I didn't even step out of the home. Then the WHO came out to say it's heavily airborne. Funeral pyres line up the grounds, air thick with smoke, and weddings don't stop in containment zones. It's true. I am the bride who lost her husband on the wedding night, the mother who miscarried, the son who slept with his father's new bride. But please, right now, hear me out. I'm that shriek, that wail, that weeping sound, the cry so shrill. But all you hear is the vulture's call, the hawk pushed high. Hear me now, not too late. Save yourselves and keep me around. Loving morning lurks close by. Let's grab it by the hands.
A lot of Whitman-esque kind of elements going on there. I am this and so forth, and you're identifying with all of the, the elements going on within the poem. You've got the people who are refusing to mask up, and you've got people that are sick and dying, and you've put all these contrasting elements together. And I think and in a way you've identified with various things going on in the poem. So I think it's excellent, and thank you for sharing that. And you capture quite a bit of the all the different things going on, that how this affects people. So I think that's another historical poem with a lot of personal elements, but also you're more general in that one than the first one. The first one was very much a very concrete situation, and this was more of a general picture poem. So thank you for sharing that. So would you like to tell us a little bit about your group, Poets Without Borders?
Yes, certainly, very happily. It's a group that I kind of thought of. I was just invited to read somewhere, and there were several things going on in this and that group, and I thought, why not form a group? Actually, I had worked hard earlier making friends. We all know that friendship is a beautiful thing. It's a commitment. It's something very nice, and Facebook allows us to do that in a very beautiful way. So I sort of reached across. I crossed the border online, and I happened to meet these people online, and I sent them friend requests, and I got some requests back as well. And so we started talking, and so we started translating each other, which was wonderful. And that is how those publications happened. So then I thought, why not, make a group of poets who are like-minded and
Mm-hmm.
love poetry, and then we can celebrate some poetry together, even reading. So that is what we do now. So these are poets that I met, initially, and then met later through friends, all online, some through contacts here in India. Actually, somebody was invited here for a festival. Somebody from Israel, I remember his name, Amir Or. He's a very famous poet. He's a friend, and I sent him a Facebook request. He was the first person, and that is how, from there, I just traveled all over Europe actually.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very the journey as well as the destination, which is just, just this is the first one, right? I put these people together in a group, and they're very senior poets, they're acclaimed poets, and we do these readings together, and I also asked them if the name Poets Without Borders is okay, and everybody said yes. It just means that we think that borders should not be politicized. We all know that everywhere immigration is a crisis, right, Dustin?
Mm-hmm.
Be it the Bangladeshi issue in India or the Rohingya refugees. I just did a reading uh, with the poets from Poets Without Borders on the current Myanmar crisis, the
Mm-hmm.
crisis in Afghanistan, ongoing Palestine and Colombia, and we had poets from so many of these places join us. Of course, nobody from Myanmar. You just can't find anybody from Myanmar online right now. It's very alarming. Anyways, these are the sort of things that we do. We also did readings around, say, Halloween, which I miss, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a poet from China translated it in Chinese, even published it in Chinese newspaper. So it's just wonderful. Even I published him, translated him. So same, it's that way. Some of us translate, some of us organize festivals. Like Dominique Williams, some people organize other readings. So it's just wonderful. And these are very talented poets. And I would like to say that it's really a very nice experience. Of course, it's a lot of work sometimes, because with all things, like your technical issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your laptop might suddenly have some
Right.
issues. I mean,
Right.
but but similar issues, links and timings and all of that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm just saying this, that those are things that, I mean, I just said this to sound realistic, right? That
Right.
every beautiful thing also has some challenges, but it's a very beautiful, sort of group. I would like to say a very caring, coherent group of poets. With poets from Italy, like I said, from Wales, England, from China, from Israel, from Canada, from the United States, from Romania, Czech Republic, lots of poets from India, from Bangladesh, and we are trying to get more and more poets from different countries, and also, more poets from each country. And it's wonderful to read. I mean, you must be aware of all of these reading
Mm-hmm.
open mics. And I think that in the lockdown, internet has just proved to be a boom. I mean, it has proved to be a blessing.
Right.
So I did open mics in Scotland, in the UK, as well, many places in UK, some in the United States, and I'm so happy to be talking to you right now. I'm like, yeah. Not in a village, it's a smart city, but trust me, this is worse than, it's worse than a village next to Buffalo, right? Williamsville
Right.
or Clan. I mean, it's so densely populated. That is why Corona is not going away. It's so densely populated. We need more greenery, right? I mean, apart from all the medical crisis, right? So that's it. But this is it's called Muzaffarpur. It's my native town. I also used to live in Delhi, but these days, I just live here because it's it's more secluded and more peaceful compared to Delhi. But travel has been a hazard, so we've been stuck here for more than a year. It's like 80 kilometers from Nepal, to give you an idea of where it is. You know, it's in the eastern part of India, 80 kilometers from Nepal, from say Viratnagar. It's a beautiful place, and so we are not too far away from the hills. The weather can be beautiful, but whatever. So what I'm saying is, it's unbelievable. After 14 years in North America, I'm here, but the internet doesn't let me feel so, you know, terrible.
Right.
Yeah. Of course, we all are talking about, you know, the challenges of social media as well, and that is why I mentioned all of those things. Not just the technology, you know, challenging you, but even the ways in which we connect. I think that's something to be underlined. But we will get smarter with it, all of us. Even, you know, there are human mistakes that I make or anybody else, but. We will get smarter with it. But I just I'm saying this that it has kind of proved to be such a wonder magic, you know, a wonderful thing. And the real beauty of it is that it's so international, with so many poets from different countries of different nationality uh, being there, that it's really beautiful. So we have different time zones, but
Right.
all of it is wonderful. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and we're going to go ahead and close out. And it was wonderful speaking to you, and thank you so much for sharing your poetry as well as your thoughts on contemporary events and Corona and the environment and immigration and your story as well. This has been the New York Parrot Literary Corner. Today we had Pankhuri Sinha, so we from India, and we hopefully will have somebody new tomorrow who will be just as interesting and unique as Pankhuri. So come and join us. Subscribe to our channel. We're looking for 1 million subscribers. 1 million. It sounds like a lot, but we will get there. Give us time. And if you would like to donate out there, you guys out there, look for our YouTube on our YouTube station. We have paypal.me/nyparrot. That's where you can donate. And if anybody would like to have a platform here, you can get in touch with me at literarycorner@newyorkparrot.com. That's literarycorner@newyorkparrot.com. Thank you, and keep an eye out. And we will be back tomorrow with yet another guest from worldwide fame and fortune and beautiful words of wisdom. So keep an eye out for us. And thank you again for joining us, Pankhuri. It's been wonderful speaking to you. I'm Dustin Pickering, and this has been the New York Parrot Literary Corner.